Marcus Webb sat in his small wooden cabin, staring at the envelope in his hands. The paper was thick and expensive looking. It had come from a lawyer's office in Pine Ridge, a town he had not visited in over 20 years. His hand shook a little as he opened it. Inside was a letter that would change his life. His uncle Raymond had died. Marcus barely remembered the old man. They had not spoken since Marcus was a boy. There had been some kind of fight in the family, something the adults never explained to him. After that, Uncle Raymond became like a ghost, someone people mentioned but never visited. But now Uncle Raymond had left everything to Marcus. The letter said Marcus was the only living relative. He had inherited a ranch in the valley below the mountains. Marcus looked around his cabin. He had lived here alone for 15 years. After his wife left him, he ran away to the mountains. He worked small jobs, cut firewood, and kept to himself. He was 52 years old now, and he had grown used to being alone. The next morning, Marcus packed his old truck. He did not own much. Some clothes, a few tools, his hunting rifle, and books were all he needed. As he drove down the winding mountain road, memories came back to him. He remembered visiting Uncle Raymond's ranch once as a child. He remembered big fields, cows everywhere, and a huge red barn. His uncle had been a quiet man with rough hands and sad eyes. Even as a child, Marcus sensed something heavy about him, like he carried a great weight. The drive took 3 hours. Pine Ridge was a small town with one main street. There was a diner, a hardware store, a gas station, and not much else. Marcus drove through without stopping. The ranch was 10 miles outside of town, down a dirt road that had more holes than smooth spots. When he finally saw the ranch, his heart sank. The place looked abandoned. The main house was a 2-story building with white paint peeling off in long strips. Several windows were broken. The porch sagged in the middle. Weeds had taken over everything. What used to be green pastures were now brown fields full of dead grass and thorny bushes. Marcus parked his truck and stepped out. The silence was strange. He was used to mountain silence, but this was different. This silence felt heavy, like the whole place was holding its breath. He walked toward the house, his boots crunching on the gravel driveway. The front door was unlocked. Inside, everything was covered in dust. The furniture was old but solid, heavy wooden pieces from another time. There were pictures on the walls, faded photographs of people Marcus did not recognize. He found one picture of his uncle as a young man, standing next to a woman. They were not smiling, just standing side by side, looking serious. Marcus spent the first hour just walking through the house. There were 3 bedrooms upstairs, all empty except for beds and dressers. The kitchen had an old stove and a refrigerator that no longer worked. The living room had a fireplace big enough to stand in. Everything smelled like dust and old wood and something else he could not name. Loneliness, maybe. That night, Marcus slept in the master bedroom. He spread his sleeping bag on the old bed, too tired to care about the dust. As he lay there in the darkness, he heard sounds. The house creaked and groaned like an old person settling into a chair. Wind whistled through the broken windows. Somewhere outside, an animal howled. Marcus did not sleep well. The next 3 days passed in hard work. Marcus cleaned the house as best he could. He swept and mopped and threw out things that were too old or broken to save. He fixed 2 of the broken windows with wood boards. He got the water running again, though it came out brown at first. He drove into town and bought supplies, food, cleaning things, and tools he would need. The people in Pine Ridge were friendly but curious. At the hardware store, an old man asked him if he was Raymond's nephew. Word traveled fast in small towns. Marcus said yes, he had inherited the ranch. The old man nodded slowly and said, "Your uncle was a private man. Kept to himself mostly. Good man, though. Sorry for your loss." Marcus thanked him, but he did not feel much loss. How could he miss someone he barely knew? Still, he felt something. Maybe it was curiosity. What kind of life had Uncle Raymond lived out here, all alone for so many years? On the 4th morning, Marcus decided it was time to explore the barn. He had been avoiding it, though he did not know why. The barn was enormous, at least 100 feet long and 3 stories high. The red paint was almost completely gone, leaving gray wood that looked like old bones. The big sliding door was stuck, and Marcus had to push hard to get it open. Inside, sunlight came through cracks in the walls, making stripes across the dusty floor. There were old farm machines Marcus did not recognize, covered in rust and bird droppings. Piles of hay bales had turned to moldy lumps. The smell was strong, a mix of old hay, animal waste, and rot. Birds had made nests in the rafters, and Marcus could hear them moving around above him. He walked slowly through the main floor, looking at everything. There were stalls where cows or horses had once lived. There were tools hanging on the walls, their handles smooth from years of use. There were empty feed bags piled in one corner. Everything was old and forgotten, like a museum of ranch life from long ago. But something felt wrong. Marcus could not explain it. As he stood there in the barn, he felt like he was being watched. He turned around quickly, but there was nothing there. Just dust floating in the sunlight. Just old equipment and shadows. He laughed at himself for being nervous, but the feeling did not go away. He noticed the workbench along the far wall. It was a massive thing, built from thick wooden planks. Tools were scattered across its surface, old hammers and wrenches and things Marcus did not have names for. He walked over to it, his footsteps echoing in the empty barn. That was when he noticed something strange. He had been looking at the barn from outside earlier that morning, measuring it with his eyes, thinking about repairs. The barn was about 100 feet long from the outside, but inside, from the door to the back wall, it only seemed about 80 feet. Where were the other 20 feet? Marcus stood very still, thinking. Maybe he was wrong. Maybe he had measured wrong. But the more he looked, the more certain he became. There was space missing, space hidden somewhere. He began to search more carefully. He tapped on walls, listening for hollow sounds. He moved hay bales and looked behind old equipment. He climbed up to the second level and searched there too. Nothing. As the sun began to set, Marcus climbed back down, frustrated and tired. He was about to give up when he decided to look under the workbench one more time. He got down on his hands and knees in the dirt and looked underneath. At first he saw nothing but darkness and spider webs. But then, in the very back, he saw it. A metal latch, almost completely hidden by dirt and shadows. Marcus's heart began to beat faster. He reached under the bench, his fingers finding the cold metal. The latch was stiff, and he had to pull hard. When it finally moved, he heard a click that echoed through the barn. A section of the floor beneath the workbench shifted slightly. He stood up and pushed the workbench to the side. It was heavy, and it took all his strength to move it. Underneath was a trap door, about 3 feet square. It had a metal ring for a handle. Marcus grabbed the ring and pulled. The door opened with a loud creak, revealing a dark hole and wooden stairs leading down into blackness. Marcus stood at the edge, looking down into the darkness. Cold air came up from below, air that smelled like earth and something chemical, something that did not belong underground. His mind told him to go get a flashlight from his truck. His gut told him to close the door and walk away. But curiosity was stronger than fear. He went to his truck and got his big flashlight. When he came back, the trap door was still open, waiting like a mouth. Marcus turned on the flashlight and pointed it down the stairs. The beam of light showed old wooden steps going down about 15 feet. At the bottom, he could see a concrete floor. Taking a deep breath, Marcus started down the stairs. Each step creaked under his weight. The air got colder as he went deeper. His flashlight beam bounced around, showing glimpses of what was below. White walls, something metal, papers. When he reached the bottom, Marcus stopped and looked around. What he saw made his blood turn to ice. He was standing in a large underground room, about 20 feet by 20 feet. The walls were painted white and they were covered with things. Newspaper clippings, photographs, maps with red circles and lines drawn on them. Dozens, maybe hundreds, of pieces of paper, all pinned up like some kind of crazy display. Marcus walked closer, his flashlight shaking in his hand. He began to read the newspaper clippings. Missing person reports, articles about unsolved disappearances, stories about people who vanished and were never found. The dates went back decades. Some were from the 1970s, yellowed and fragile. Others were more recent, from just a few years ago. The photographs were worse. Faces of people smiling in some pictures, serious in others. Men, women, teenagers. Some of the photos looked like they had been cut out of newspapers. Others looked like copies of driver's licenses or school pictures. Under each photo was a name, a date, and a location. Marcus's hands started to shake. His uncle had built this room. His quiet, private uncle had spent years collecting all of this. But why? What did it mean? In the center of the room was a metal cabinet, the kind you might see in an office. It was locked with a heavy padlock. Marcus ran up the stairs as fast as he could. His heart was pounding so hard he thought it might break through his chest. When he got to the top, he pushed the trapdoor closed and shoved the workbench back over it. Then he ran out of the barn into the fresh air. Outside, he bent over with his hands on his knees, trying to breathe. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and red. Everything looked normal. The fields, the house, the mountains in the distance. But nothing was normal. Not anymore. Under that barn was a room full of secrets, a room that told stories of missing people and lost lives. Marcus spent that night in his truck. He could not go back into the house. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw those photographs, all those faces, all those names. He tried to tell himself there must be an explanation. Maybe his uncle was just interested in mysteries. Maybe he was trying to solve these cases. Maybe he was helping, not hurting, but those personal items, that bracelet, that wallet, those belonged to real people. How did Uncle Raymond get them? The question spun in Marcus's head all night long. When the sun came up, Marcus was exhausted, but he could not sleep. He made coffee on his camping stove and sat on the truck's tailgate, drinking it slowly. He had to decide what to do. The smart thing would be to call the police right now. Tell them what he found. Let them handle it, but something stopped him. If he called the police now, they would come and take everything. They would investigate his uncle. They would tell everyone in town that Raymond Webb had been some kind of criminal. And maybe he was. But Marcus did not know for sure. He owed it to his uncle, to his family name, to know the truth first. Marcus decided to go back down into that room. This time he would really look at everything. He would read the papers and try to understand what his uncle had been doing. If it was as bad as it seemed, then he would call the police. But he needed to know. He walked back to the barn. In the daylight, it looked less scary. Just an old building that needed paint. He moved the workbench again, opened the trapdoor, and went down the stairs with his flashlight. This time he also brought a camping lantern that filled the room with bright white light. The room looked even worse in the bright light. The walls were completely covered. Marcus started at one corner and began to look at everything carefully. The first section seemed to be the oldest. Newspaper clippings from 1978. A girl named Sarah Martinez had disappeared from a truck stop in Nevada. She was 17 years old. She was last seen getting into a semi-truck. She was never found. Next to her clipping was another one from 1979. A man named Robert Chen vanished from a rest area in Utah. His car was found with the keys still in it, his wallet on the seat. No sign of struggle. No sign of Robert. Marcus moved along the wall, reading case after case. They were all similar. People disappearing from highways, truck stops, rest areas. People traveling alone. People who got into vehicles and were never seen again. The cases were from different states: Nevada, Utah, Colorado, Wyoming, New Mexico. But they all had that pattern. Marcus noticed his uncle's handwriting on many of the clippings. Little notes in the margins. Same highway or similar description, or check trucking routes. His uncle had been making connections. He had been trying to find patterns that the police missed. Marcus felt a small bit of hope. Maybe his uncle was not a criminal. Maybe he was investigating. But that still did not explain the personal items in those boxes. He moved to the maps on the wall. They were road maps of 5 different states. Red circles marked locations. When Marcus looked closer, he realized each circle was where someone had disappeared. Red lines connected the circles, showing possible routes. His uncle had been tracking something or someone who traveled these roads. Marcus spent hours reading everything on the walls. By the time he finished, a picture was starting to form. Between 1978 and 2023, at least 30 people had vanished along these highways. The police had investigated each case separately, but no one except Uncle Raymond had looked at them together. No one else had seen the pattern. Now Marcus turned his attention to the metal cabinet. He needed to open it. He needed to know what was inside. He went back up to the barn and found a crowbar. It took him 20 minutes of pulling and prying, but finally the lock broke and the cabinet doors swung open. Inside were journals. Dozens of notebooks, each one labeled with dates. Marcus pulled out the first one. It was labeled 1978-1980, in his uncle's neat handwriting. He sat down on the cold floor and began to read. The first entry was dated March 15, 1978. "Today I saw something I cannot forget," his uncle had written. "I was driving home late from Denver. I stopped at the truck stop outside Pine Ridge to get coffee. I saw a man talking to a young girl. She looked scared. He was much older, maybe 40. She was just a teenager. He was holding her arm tight. I almost said something, but then she got into his semi-truck and they drove away. I told myself it was probably her father. I told myself it was none of my business." The next entry was dated April 2, 1978. "I saw on the news today, a girl disappeared from that same truck stop. Sarah Martinez, 17 years old, last seen getting into a semi-truck. I think it was the same girl I saw. I think I saw the man who took her. And I did nothing. I said nothing. This is my fault." Marcus felt tears in his eyes as he read. His uncle had witnessed something. He had seen a girl being taken, and the guilt had eaten him alive. The journal entries continued. His uncle had gone to the police, but his description was too vague. It was dark. He did not see the truck's license plate. He did not see the company name. He could not really describe the man's face. The police took his statement, but nothing came of it. Sarah Martinez was never found, but Uncle Raymond could not let it go. The guilt drove him to start investigating. He began reading newspapers from all over the region. He started noticing other disappearances. He began to see patterns. He started making maps and taking notes. He became obsessed with finding the truth. Marcus read journal after journal. Years of his uncle's life were written on these pages. Raymond had stopped ranching as much. He spent all his free time on this investigation. He drove to different towns, talked to families of missing people, asked questions. He was not a detective. He had no training, but he cared. He cared so much that it took over his life. In the journals from the 1990s, Uncle Raymond wrote about how lonely he was. He had never married. He had no close friends. People in town thought he was strange. But he could not stop. Every time he thought about quitting, he would remember Sarah Martinez's face. He would remember that he saw her and did nothing. He felt like he owed it to her, and to all the others, to find out what happened. Marcus found entries about the personal items in the boxes. His uncle explained that he had bought them. Some he found at pawn shops in different towns. Some he bought from people online who were selling old jewelry or watches. His uncle believed these items had belonged to the missing people. He believed the person taking these people was selling their belongings to cover his tracks. In one entry from 2010, Raymond wrote, "I bought a silver bracelet today from a pawn shop in Utah. The owner said a truck driver sold it to him 6 years ago. The bracelet has an inscription, 'To Jennifer. Love, Mom.'" I found a case from 2004. Jennifer Walsh, age 19, disappeared from a rest stop in Utah. Her mother said she was wearing a silver bracelet with an inscription. "I think this is hers. I think I found a piece of her." I cried in my truck for an hour. Marcus understood now. His uncle was not a criminal. He was a broken man trying to make things right. He was trying to find evidence. He was trying to give families answers. He was doing what the police could not do, connecting all these separate cases into one big investigation. But there was more. Marcus picked up the most recent journal from 2024. The entries were different now. There was excitement in the writing, but also fear. His uncle had made a breakthrough. January 10, 2024. After all these years, I finally know. I have been tracking truck driver licenses and company records. I have been looking at who had routes covering all these locations during the right time periods. There is one name that keeps appearing. Douglas Caney. He drove long-haul trucks from 1976 to 1995. His routes covered every single location where someone disappeared. Marcus's hands shook as he read. On January 15th, 2024, I looked into Douglas Kane more deeply. He does not drive anymore. In 1995, he started his own trucking company, Caney Trucking. The company is based right here in Pine Ridge. I have driven past it 100 times and never knew. He lives in a big house on the hill. Everyone in town knows him. He gives money to the church. He sponsors the Little League team. He is respected. And I think he is a monster. January 28, 2024. I have been watching Caney Trucking. I have been writing down the routes their trucks take. Some of them match the old patterns. There have been 3 disappearances in the past 5 years along highways covered by Caney trucks. I think it is still happening. I think he is still taking people. Or maybe his drivers are doing it now. Maybe he taught them. Maybe this is bigger than just one man. Marcus felt sick again. A serial predator, operating for almost 50 years, taking people from highways and rest stops, and no one knew. No one except his uncle. The final entries were the most frightening. March 3rd, 2024. Douglas Caney came to my ranch today. Marcus climbed out of the underground room and closed the trap door. His legs felt weak. He stumbled out of the barn and into the afternoon sunlight. Everything looked the same as it had that morning, but the world had changed completely. He now knew a terrible truth, a truth that people had died for. He walked to his truck and just sat in the driver's seat for a long time. His mind was spinning. He should call the police right now. He should tell them everything. But his hands would not move toward his phone. Something held him back. What if no one believed him? His uncle had been investigating for 46 years and never convinced anyone. Marcus was just a nobody from the mountains. He had no law enforcement experience. He had no authority. And Douglas Caney was a respected businessman in Pine Ridge. He donated to charities. He sponsored youth sports. People loved him. Marcus had only been in town a few days, and already he had heard people speak well of Caney. The woman at the grocery store mentioned that Caney Trucking employed 20 local people. The man at the gas station said Douglas Caney had helped his son get a job. Would these people believe that their local hero was actually a killer? And there was another problem. What if Caney had friends in the police department? Small towns were like that sometimes. Everyone knew everyone. If Marcus went to the wrong person, if he talked to someone who was loyal to Caney, then Marcus would be in danger too. The same thing that happened to his uncle could happen to him. Marcus spent that night in the house, but he did not sleep. He kept all the lights on. He kept his hunting rifle next to the bed. Every sound made him jump. Every creak of the old house made his heart race. He thought about just leaving. He could drive back up to his mountain cabin tonight. He could forget everything he saw. He could sell this ranch and never come back. But when he closed his eyes, he saw those faces from the underground room. Sarah Martinez, Jennifer Walsh, Robert Chen. 30 people over 46 years. 30 families who never got answers. 30 lives that mattered. His uncle had given his whole life trying to find the truth for them. Could Marcus just walk away? He thought about his uncle, alone on this ranch for decades, carrying this terrible knowledge. Uncle Raymond could have walked away too. He could have told himself it was not his problem. But he did not. He saw something wrong and he tried to fix it even though it cost him everything. His happiness, his peace, his life. By morning, Marcus had made a decision. He would not go to the police yet. But he would not run away either. He would investigate more. He would be smart about it. He would find proof that even Douglas Caney could not deny. And then he would take it to the police in a bigger city, somewhere Caney had no influence. First, he needed to understand everything in that underground room. He spent the next 2 days down there reading every journal, every newspaper clipping, every note his uncle had made. He took pictures of everything with his phone. He organized the information in his mind, creating a timeline. The pattern was clear once you saw it. From 1976 to 1995, disappearances happened along routes that Douglas Caney drove as a long-haul trucker. The cases were spread out 1 or 2 per year, in different states. That was why no one connected them. But when you mapped them all together, they followed Caney's truck routes almost perfectly. In 1995, when Caney started his company and stopped driving, the disappearances slowed down. But they did not stop completely. Uncle Raymond believed that Caney's drivers might be involved now. Maybe Caney had taught others. Maybe the horror had spread. Marcus studied the personal items in the boxes. His uncle had documented each one carefully, where he bought it, when, and which missing person he believed it belonged to. There were 12 items total, 12 pieces of evidence that these were not just random disappearances. Someone was taking these people and stealing their belongings. On the third day, Marcus decided he needed to see Douglas Caney for himself. He needed to look this man in the eyes. He drove into Pine Ridge and asked at the hardware store where Caney Trucking was located. The owner gave him directions happily, saying that Douglas was always looking for good workers if Marcus needed a job. Caney Trucking was on the east side of town, a big facility with a large parking lot full of semi-trucks. The building was new and clean, with a sign that said, Caney Trucking, family-owned since 1995. There were people working in the yard, checking trucks, loading cargo. Everything looked normal and legitimate. Marcus parked across the street and watched. He did not know what he was looking for exactly. Maybe he hoped Caney would do something suspicious. Maybe he just needed to see the face of the man who had haunted his uncle's life. After about an hour, a man came out of the main office. He was in his 70s but looked strong and healthy. He had white hair and wore clean jeans and a company polo shirt. He talked to workers, laughing and patting them on the back. He looked like someone's friendly grandfather. This was Douglas Caney. Marcus watched as Caney walked around checking trucks, talking to drivers. He moved with confidence like a man who owned the world and knew it. There was nothing in his behavior that suggested evil, but that meant nothing. The worst monsters often looked the most normal. As Marcus sat there watching, one of the truck drivers pointed in his direction. Caney turned and looked straight at Marcus's truck. For a moment, their eyes met across the distance. Caney smiled and waved, a friendly gesture. Marcus's blood turned cold. He started his truck and drove away quickly. He was being stupid. He was putting himself in danger. Caney would remember his truck now. If Caney had killed Uncle Raymond for investigating, what would he do to Raymond's nephew? Marcus drove back to the ranch, angry at himself. He had been reckless. He needed to be smarter. He needed to think like his uncle had thought. Careful, patient, collecting evidence without being seen. That night, Marcus went back down to the underground room. He reread his uncle's notes about the other evidence copies. Uncle Raymond had written that he made 3 copies of everything. 1 in a safety deposit box in Denver, 1 buried under an oak tree on the east side of the property, 1 with a lawyer in Grand Junction. Marcus decided to find the buried copy first. The next morning, he walked the east side of his property. There were several old oak trees. It took him 3 hours of digging around different trees before he found it. A metal box buried 3 feet deep under the largest oak. Inside was a waterproof bag containing copies of journals, photographs, and documents. Everything his uncle had collected, duplicated, and hidden. This was good. This meant that even if something happened to the underground room, the evidence still existed. Marcus reburied the box and marked the tree in his mind. He would not dig it up again unless he had to. Now he felt more confident. The truth was protected. Multiple copies existed. Even if Caney destroyed the underground room, even if something happened to Marcus, the evidence would survive. But Marcus still needed more proof before going to the police. He needed something that directly connected Caney to the disappearances. The journals were powerful, but they were just his uncle's theories. The personal items were suspicious, but they could not be definitely linked to Caney. Marcus needed something stronger. He decided to investigate Caney's current trucking company. If disappearances were still happening along Caney trucking routes, that would be powerful evidence. Marcus spent days at the local library, reading old newspapers, looking for recent missing person cases in the region. He found 3 cases from the past 5 years. All were people traveling alone on highways. All were last seen at truck stops or rest areas. All were along routes that, according to public records, Caney Trucking used regularly. His uncle had been right. It was still happening, but Marcus needed more than coincidence. He needed to prove that Caney trucks were actually at those locations when people disappeared. He started calling truck stops, pretending to be a reporter writing about highway safety. He asked about security cameras, about logs of which trucks stopped when. Most places did not keep records that far back. But one place did. A truck stop in Wyoming still had security footage from 2 years ago. A woman named Lisa Torres had disappeared from there. The manager said he would send Marcus copies of the footage from that week if Marcus paid for the copying fees. Marcus agreed immediately. While he waited for the footage, Marcus kept reading his uncle's journals. He was looking for anything he might have missed. In one journal from 2015, he found something interesting. Uncle Raymond had written about talking to a former Caney trucking driver named Pete Morrison. Pete had quit the company suddenly and left town. He told Raymond that he saw something that scared him, but he would not say what. He just said, "Don't trust anyone at that company. They are all loyal to Caney. He has dirt on all of them." Marcus wondered if Pete Morrison was still alive. If Pete had seen something, he could be a witness. Marcus searched online and found a Pete Morrison living in Montana. The age matched. It could be him. Should Marcus contact him? Would Pete talk? Or would Pete warn Caney that someone was asking questions? It was risky. But Marcus was running out of options. He needed someone who could confirm his uncle's theories. Someone who had been on the inside. Marcus spent a whole day thinking about what to do. He walked the ranch, imagining his uncle walking these same paths. Marcus ran to the bedroom and grabbed his hunting rifle. His hands were shaking, but he forced them to be steady. He loaded the rifle and put extra bullets in his pocket. Then he went to the back door of the house, the one that faced away from the barn. He slipped outside quietly and moved through the darkness toward the barn. He could hear the men inside, their voices echoing in the big empty space. They were arguing about something. Marcus crept closer, hiding behind an old tractor that sat between the house and the barn. "It has to be here somewhere," one man was saying. "Raymond spent all his time in this barn. Whatever he was hiding, it's here." "Maybe the nephew already found it," another voice said. "Maybe we're too late." "Then we have a problem," said a third voice. Marcus recognized it. It was Tom Bradley, the man who ran the office at Caney Trucking. Marcus had seen him that day he watched the company. If the nephew has the old man's files, Caney will want to know. "We need to search the house too." Marcus's blood ran cold. They were going to search the house. They would find his phone, his truck keys, everything. They would know he was nearby. He needed to act now before they left the barn. But then he heard something that made him freeze. "I don't like this," a younger voice said. "We're not killers, Tom. We drive trucks. That's all. I didn't sign up for this." "You signed up the day you took Caney's money," Tom snapped. "You think that bonus you got last year was for good driving?" "Caney takes care of his people." "But you have to take care of Caney. That's how it works." "What happened to Raymond was wrong," the young voice insisted. "He was just an old man. He didn't hurt anyone. He was going to destroy everything," Tom shouted. He was going to send Caney to prison. He was going to ruin the company. 20 families depend on this company for their living. "You want to put 20 families on the street?" There was silence for a moment. Then the young voice said quietly, "I just want to find what we came for and leave. I don't want to hurt the nephew." "Nobody wants to hurt anyone," Tom said, calmer now. "We just need to find the files and get rid of them. Then everything goes back to normal. The nephew goes back to his mountain. We go back to work. Simple." Marcus realized something important. These men were not professional criminals. They were regular people who had gotten pulled into something bad. They were scared and desperate. That made them dangerous in a different way. Desperate people did stupid things. He also realized that they had not found the trapdoor yet. They were still searching the main floor of the barn. If he was smart, he could use this. Marcus quietly moved back to the house. He went inside and grabbed his cell phone. He also grabbed the most recent journal, the one that named Douglas Caney. He stuffed the journal inside his jacket. Then he went back outside. Instead of hiding, Marcus walked openly toward the barn. He turned on his flashlight so they would see him coming. He took a deep breath and called out, "Hello? Who's there?" The voices in the barn went silent. Then Tom Bradley stepped into the doorway. He had a flashlight of his own and he shined it in Marcus's face. "Mr. Webb, we didn't mean to disturb you. We work for Caney Trucking. Your uncle owed Mr. Kane some money for feed he bought last year. We came to collect some equipment as payment. Mr. Kane said it would be okay since you inherited everything." It was a smooth lie. Tom delivered it calmly like he had been practicing. But Marcus could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hand kept moving to his belt, probably where he had a weapon. Marcus pretended to believe the lie. "Oh, okay. My uncle owed money. I didn't know that. What kind of equipment are you taking?" Tom relaxed a little. "Just some old tools. Nothing important. We'll be out of your way soon. Sorry we came so late. We've been busy all day. No problem, Marcus said. He made his voice friendly, casual. I was just cleaning up the house anyway. Can't sleep in all that dust. Let me know if you need any help finding things. That's okay, Tom said quickly.
We know what we're looking for.
You go back to your cleaning. We'll just be a few more minutes. Marcus nodded and walked back to the house, but he did not go inside. As soon as he was out of their sight, he circled around and found another hiding spot where he could watch the barn. He needed to know if they found the trapdoor. He watched as Tom went back inside the barn. He could hear them talking again, quieter now. They were worried that Marcus had seen them. They were arguing about whether to leave or keep searching. Then Marcus heard something that made his heart stop. Wait, this workbench. It's not against the wall all the way. There's marks on the floor like it's been moved. No, they had found it. Marcus watched helplessly as light from their flashlights filled the barn. He heard the workbench scraping as they pushed it aside. He heard Tom's voice, excited now. Here, there's a trapdoor here. Marcus had to do something. If they went down into that room, they would see everything. They would take all the evidence. They would destroy 46 years of his uncle's work. But what could he do? There were 4 of them. He had a rifle, but he could not shoot 4 people. He was not a killer. Then Marcus remembered something. His uncle had written about 3 copies of the evidence. The underground room was just 1 copy. There was still the safety deposit box in Denver. There was still the buried box under the oak tree. Even if these men destroyed this copy, the evidence would survive. But they did not know that. Marcus could use their ignorance. He stood up from his hiding spot and walked toward the barn again, this time with his rifle visible. He did not point it at anyone, just held it casually, like a ranch owner checking on intruders. Hey, I found my uncle's financial records, he called out. He didn't owe anybody money. What's really going on here? The men came out of the barn. All 4 of them now. Tom was in front. The others looked nervous. Marcus could see now that Tom had a pistol in his belt. The others did not seem to be armed, or at least their weapons were not visible. Mr. Webb, you need to calm down, Tom said. His voice had lost its friendly tone. Put the rifle down. We can talk about this. I think you should leave, Marcus said. His voice was steady, but his heart was racing. Right now. We found the trapdoor, Tom said. We know about the room. We know what your uncle was doing. He was investigating things that were none of his business. Collecting information about people. That's illegal, you know. Stalking, harassment. He was investigating murders, Marcus said. Missing people. People who disappeared and were never found. Tom laughed, but it was not a happy sound. Murders? Your uncle was paranoid. He spent 40 years chasing shadows. There are no murders. People disappear all the time. They run away. They start new lives. They get lost. That's not murder. What about Sarah Martinez? Marcus said. What about Jennifer Walsh? What about Robert Chen and all the others? What about the personal items my uncle found? Their belongings sold to pawn shops by truck drivers. Drivers who worked for Caney. Tom's face went dark. You don't know what you're talking about. You've been down in that crazy room for a few days and now you think you're a detective. You're just like your uncle, obsessed, paranoid. Do you know what happened to him? He died in a tractor accident, Marcus said. No, Tom said quietly. He died because he could not leave things alone. He died because he was going to hurt good people with his crazy theories. And you're going to die the same way if you're not smart. The other 3 men looked uncomfortable. The young one from before said, Tom, come on. You can't talk like that. Shut up, Danny, Tom snapped. Mr. Webb needs to understand the situation. He needs to know that this ends here tonight. We take what's in that room. We destroy it. And Mr. Webb forgets everything he saw. Then everyone lives and everything is fine. And if I don't forget? Marcus asked. Tom's hand moved to his pistol. Then you have an accident. Just like your uncle. Marcus raised his rifle slightly, not pointing it at Tom yet, but making it clear he could. There are 4 of you and 1 of me. But I'm the one with the rifle. And this is my property. You're trespassing. If I shoot you, it's self-defense. You won't shoot, Tom said, but he did not sound completely sure. Marcus thought about his uncle. About 46 years of investigation. About 30 missing people. About families who never got answers. About justice that never came. He thought about Sarah Martinez, the 17-year-old girl his uncle saw being taken. He thought about how his uncle spent his whole life trying to make up for staying silent that night. Marcus would not stay silent. "You're right that I don't want to shoot anyone," Marcus said. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave right now. All of you. Get in your trucks and drive away. The evidence in that room stays here. And tomorrow morning I'm taking it to the police in Denver. Not Pine Ridge. Denver. Where Douglas Kane has no friends." Tom laughed. "You can't go to the police. They'll think you're crazy. Just like they thought your uncle was crazy." "Maybe," Marcus said. "But I have 46 years of documented evidence. I have journals. I have maps. I have personal items from missing people. I have records showing Caney was at every location when people disappeared. That's not crazy. That's evidence." "It's not enough," Tom said. "It's all circumstantial. No bodies, no witnesses, no proof. Caney will never go to jail." "Maybe not," Marcus admitted. "But the investigation will destroy his reputation. His company will be investigated." The sheriff's car pulled into the driveway and stopped. A woman got out. She was in her 40s, wearing a uniform with a badge that said Sheriff Torres. She looked at the scene carefully, at Marcus with his rifle, at Tom and his men by the barn, at the tension hanging in the air like smoke. "Evening," she said calmly. "Got a call about suspicious activity out here." "Everything okay?" Marcus did not know what to say. Was Sheriff Torres one of Caney's friends? Would she believe him, or would she help these men? In a small town like Pine Ridge, everyone knew everyone. Whose side was she on? Tom spoke first, his voice friendly again. "Evening, Sheriff. Just a misunderstanding. We came to collect some equipment that Douglas Caney paid for. Mr. Webb here got nervous seeing us so late. Can't blame him being new to the area and all." Sheriff Torres looked at Marcus. "That true, Mr. Webb? Just a misunderstanding?" Marcus made a split-second decision. He had to trust someone eventually. "No, ma'am, it's not true. These men broke into my barn. They found something my uncle was hiding, and they're trying to take it. I want them off my property." Tom's face got red. "That's not what happened. We had permission from Douglas Caney. He owns some of the equipment here." "Do you have paperwork showing that?" Sheriff Torres asked. Tom hesitated. "Well, no. It was a verbal agreement. Between gentlemen. Then you're trespassing," Sheriff Torres said simply. "Mr. Webb has asked you to leave his property. So you need to leave. Now." Tom looked like he wanted to argue, but Sheriff Torres had her hand resting on her own gun. The message was clear. Tom nodded slowly. "Fine, we'll go. But Douglas Caney will be hearing about this." "I'm sure he will," Sheriff Torres said. "Drive safe, gentlemen." Tom and his men got into their trucks. Danny, the young one, looked back at Marcus with something like relief in his eyes. Maybe he was glad this had not ended in violence. The trucks drove away, their tail lights disappearing down the road. Sheriff Torres turned to Marcus. "Want to tell me what's really going on?" Marcus lowered his rifle. His hands were shaking now that the danger was past. "Can we talk inside?" "It's a long story. I've got time," Sheriff Torres said. They went into the house. Marcus made coffee, his hands still trembling. Then he started talking. He told her everything. About the underground room. About his uncle's 46 years of investigation. About the missing people. About Douglas Kane. About the journals and the evidence and the murder disguised as an accident. Sheriff Torres listened without interrupting. Her face stayed neutral, but Marcus could see her eyes getting sharper, more focused. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "That's quite a story," she finally said. "I can show you," Marcus said. "Everything is in the barn. The underground room. The journals. The evidence. All of it. Let's go look," Sheriff Torres said. They walked to the barn together. Marcus moved the workbench and opened the trap door. They climbed down into the underground room. Sheriff Torres looked at the walls covered with newspaper clippings and photographs. She looked at the boxes of personal items. She picked up one of the journals and read a few pages. "My God," she whispered. "Your uncle really did all this." "For 46 years, Marcus said. He never stopped looking for the truth." Sheriff Torres kept reading. She looked at the maps, at the documented patterns, at the careful notes about Douglas Kane. When she finally looked up, her face was serious. "This is major. If even half of this is true, we're talking about one of the biggest serial crime cases in the region's history." "Do you believe it?" Marcus asked. "Do you believe my uncle?" Sheriff Torres thought for a moment. "I believe your uncle believed it. I believe he spent his life investigating something he thought was real. Whether Douglas Caney is actually involved, That's for a proper investigation to determine. But yes, there's enough here to start that investigation. Relief flooded through Marcus. She believed him. Or at least she believed enough. What happens now? Now we secure this scene, Sheriff Torres said. I'm calling the state police. This is bigger than Pine Ridge jurisdiction. We need investigators who specialize in this kind of case, and we need to protect you. If what your uncle wrote is true, you're in danger. Tom Bradley threatened me, Marcus said. He said I would have an accident like my uncle. Sheriff Torres's jaw tightened. Did he? Well, Tom Bradley is about to have a very bad day. Come on, let's go up. I need to make some calls. They climbed back up to the barn. Sheriff Torres went to her car and started making calls. Marcus could hear her talking to someone, explaining the situation. She used terms like multi-jurisdictional investigation and potential serial crimes and officer safety. Within an hour, 2 more sheriff's cars arrived. Then a state police car. Then an unmarked car with 2 people in suits who looked like FBI. The ranch was suddenly full of law enforcement. They treated the barn like a crime scene, putting up tape, taking photographs, documenting everything. One of the FBI agents, a woman named Agent Rodriguez, sat with Marcus in the house. I need you to tell me everything from the beginning, she said. Take your time. Don't leave anything out. Marcus told the story again. This time he went slower, giving more details. He told her about watching Caney trucking. He told her about finding the buried evidence under the oak tree. He told her about his uncle's notes saying there were 3 copies of everything. Agent Rodriguez took notes on everything. The safety deposit box in Denver and the buried evidence are smart backup plans. Your uncle was thorough. We'll need to collect all 3 copies to ensure the evidence is preserved. Are you going to arrest Douglas Kane? Marcus asked. Not yet, Agent Rodriguez said. We need to investigate first. We need to verify the information, interview witnesses, build a solid case. But I can tell you this is being taken very seriously. If your uncle was right, if Caney has been responsible for these disappearances, he will face justice. It might take time, but he will face justice. What about the men who came here tonight? Marcus asked. Tom Bradley and the others? They're being picked up right now, Agent Rodriguez said. We're bringing them in for questioning. The threat Tom made against you is a serious crime. Even if the rest of this investigation takes time, Tom Bradley is going to face charges for that threat. Marcus felt exhaustion wash over him. It was almost morning now. The sun would be up soon. He had not slept in days. But it did not matter. He had done it. He had protected his uncle's evidence. He had started the investigation his uncle had died trying to start. Over the next few weeks, Marcus learned to live with constant police presence. Investigators came and went from the ranch daily. They documented every piece of evidence from the underground room. They interviewed Marcus repeatedly, making sure they had every detail correct. The story broke in the news. Major investigation into decades of disappearances, the headline said. Douglas Caney's name was mentioned. Caney Trucking was mentioned. People in Pine Ridge were shocked. Some refused to believe it. Douglas Caney, their neighbor, their friend, could not be a monster. Others remembered strange things now. Times when Caney seemed too interested in news reports about missing people. Times when he asked too many questions about travelers passing through. Douglas Caney hired expensive lawyers. He denied everything. He said Raymond Webb was a paranoid old man with mental problems. He said the evidence was circumstantial. He said he was innocent, but the investigation continued. Police found records showing Caney had been at or near locations where people disappeared. They found the items Marcus's uncle had collected and traced some of them back to missing people. They interviewed Pete Morrison, the former driver, who finally agreed to talk. Pete told them about strange things he saw while working for Caney. Times when Caney asked him to dispose of items without asking questions. Times when Caney's behavior seemed off after certain routes. They examined Raymond Webb's death more closely. They found evidence that the tractor had been tampered with. Brake lines cut. Safety mechanisms disabled. It had not been an accident. It had been murder. And Tom Bradley, under pressure from FBI questioning, finally broke. He admitted that Caney had ordered him to make Raymond's death look like an accident. He admitted that Caney was dangerous, that all the drivers knew to never cross him, that people who knew too much had a way of disappearing. 6 months after Marcus found the underground room, Douglas Caney was arrested. He was charged with multiple counts of murder, kidnapping, and conspiracy. The investigation was still ongoing, but there was enough evidence now to hold him without bail. Marcus stood in the barn one morning looking at the trap door. The evidence was gone now, taken by the FBI as part of their investigation. The room below was empty, but somehow the barn felt lighter now. The heavy secret was gone. The truth was out. He thought about his uncle spending 46 years alone on this ranch carrying this terrible knowledge. Raymond Webb had died before seeing justice done, but he had made justice possible. Without his decades of investigation, without his careful documentation, without his determination to never give up, Douglas Caney would still be free. More people would still be disappearing. Sheriff Torres stopped by that morning. "How are you doing?" she asked. "Okay," Marcus said. "Still processing everything." "You did the right thing," Sheriff Torres said. "Your uncle would be proud. I just finished what he started.